The conference room on the 42nd floor of Sterling Enterprises buzzed with nervous energy. Olivia Carter sat at the long glass table, her fingers gripping her presentation notes so tightly that the paper crumpled at the edges. Around her, 12 other analysts waited their turn to present quarterly results to the executive team. But everyone knew who the real judge was. Jackson Reed, Vice President of Operations, sat at the head of the table with his arms crossed and his expression carved from stone. At 34, Jackson had earned his reputation as the most demanding executive in the building. His dark hair was always perfectly styled, his suits custom-tailored, and his standards impossibly high. People whispered that he'd made 3 analysts cry in the past month alone. Olivia had managed to avoid his wrath for the 6 months she'd been at Sterling. But her luck was about to run out. Next, Olivia Carter with the social media engagement analysis, announced Patricia. The department head, her voice tight with anxiety. Olivia stood, smoothing down her navy pencil skirt. She'd worked 70 hours on this presentation, triple-checking every statistic, every graph, every conclusion. As she clicked to her first slide, she felt Jackson's cold blue eyes lock onto her. Our engagement rates increased by 32% across all platforms, Olivia began, her voice steady despite her racing heart. The influencer partnerships we initiated in January have significantly outperformed our projections. Stop. Jackson's voice cut through the room like a blade. Olivia froze, her clicker hovering in midair. I'm sorry. This data, Jackson leaned forward, tapping his Mont Blanc pen against the table. You're attributing the engagement increase to the influencer campaign, but you haven't isolated variables. How do you know it wasn't the seasonal promotion we ran simultaneously? Heat crept up Olivia's neck. I did account for that, actually. If you look at slide 8, I've broken down the attribution model. Then start with slide 8, Jackson said coldly. Don't waste our time with flashy numbers when you haven't established causation. Several people around the table shifted uncomfortably. Olivia felt her hands begin to shake, but she clicked forward to slide 8, walking through her methodology with forced calm. Every few minutes, Jackson interrupted with another cutting question, each one designed to make her look unprepared. By the time she finished, 20 minutes had stretched into 45, and the room felt like a pressure cooker. Olivia gathered her materials with as much dignity as she could muster. One more thing, Miss Carter, Jackson said as she turned to leave. The way he emphasized Miss felt deliberately condescending. This kind of surface-level analysis might have worked wherever you came from, but at Sterling, we expect rigor. Anyone can compile numbers. We need insight. You're replaceable if you can't provide that. The room went completely silent. Olivia felt every eye on her, watching to see if she would crumble like the others. Something inside her snapped. Maybe it was the 70-hour work week. Maybe it was the 6 months of watching Jackson terrorize her colleagues. Maybe it was something deeper, something from a past she'd tried to forget. She turned back to face him, setting her materials down on the table with a deliberate thump. Then replace me, Olivia said clearly, her voice carrying across the room. If my work is so inadequate, if I'm so easily replaceable, then do it. I'm sure you'll have no problem finding someone who can meet your impossible standards. Jackson's eyes widened slightly, the first crack in his controlled facade. No one spoke to him like that, ever. Conference room now? Patricia hissed, standing up. Both of you need to cool down. But Olivia was already walking toward the door, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might burst from her chest. She heard Jackson's chair scrape back, and his footsteps following her into the hallway. Don't walk away from me, Jackson called after her. I'm not walking away. I'm leaving before I say something I really regret, Olivia shot back, her heels clicking rapidly against the marble floor. She needed space, needed air, needed anywhere that wasn't near him. She spotted a supply room door hanging open and ducked inside, intending to catch her breath for just a moment. But Jackson followed her in, and as he stepped across the threshold, the heavy door swung shut behind him with a decisive click. They both froze. Jackson reached for the handle and pulled. Nothing happened. He pulled harder. Still nothing. You've got to be kidding me, Olivia muttered, pushing past him to try the door herself. The handle turned, but the door wouldn't budge. She spotted a small digital display beside the doorframe, glowing red with the words, "Emergency lock activated. Maintenance notified." "The renovation," Jackson said flatly, running a hand through his hair and disrupting its perfect style for the first time Olivia had ever seen. "They upgraded all the fire safety systems last week. The doors auto-lock if they detect smoke or if someone triggers the emergency protocol." "Oh, there's no smoke," Olivia said. "So someone must have hit the button by accident." They stared at each other in the dim light filtering through the small window in the door. The supply room was barely 10 feet square, and with metal shelves holding office supplies, cleaning products, and ancient boxes of archived files. There was nowhere to sit, nowhere to retreat. And based on the building's weekend skeleton crew, it could be hours before maintenance arrived. "This is perfect," Olivia said, leaning back against the shelves and crossing her arms. "Just perfect. You think I want to be locked in here with you?" Jackson snapped, pulling out his phone. No signal, of course. The supply rooms were in the building's dead zone. "At least the feeling is mutual," Olivia fired back. They stood in hostile silence for a full minute. Then Jackson's expression changed, his eyes narrowing as he studied her face in the shadows. "Wait," he said slowly. "Olivia Carter, Ridgemont University?" Olivia's stomach dropped. "Don't. You're Liv Carter," Jackson continued, his voice taking on a strange quality. "From Professor Brennan's business strategy class. You sat in the front row, always first to answer questions, always staying late to argue about case studies." I said, "Don't," Olivia repeated, but her voice came out weaker this time. Jackson took a step closer, and in the confined space, it felt like he'd crossed an ocean. "You had a scholarship. You worked at that coffee shop on campus. 3 jobs, wasn't it? You were always exhausted, but you never let it show. How do you remember that?" Olivia asked, hating how vulnerable the question sounded. "Because I couldn't stop watching you," Jackson said quietly. "The whole semester. You were brilliant and determined and completely out of my league." Olivia's breath caught. This couldn't be happening. "Not here, not now, not with him. Out of your league?" She laughed bitterly. "You were Jackson Reed, heir to the Reed fortune, president of 3 clubs dating that sorority president. I was the scholarship kid serving you lattes between classes. You remember serving me coffee?" Jackson's voice dropped even lower. "I remember everything," Olivia admitted before she could stop herself. "I remember how you took it black with 1 sugar. I remember how you always left a $5 tip even though the coffee was $2. I remember how you'd sit at the corner table studying for hours, and how sometimes I'd catch you watching me when you thought I wasn't looking." The air between them felt electric now, charged with 8 years of unspoken history. "I wanted to ask you out," Jackson said, "every single day that semester, but you barely looked at me. You were so focused, so driven, like you were running from something or running toward something. I figured someone like me, someone who'd had everything handed to him, wouldn't stand a chance with someone who'd fought for every opportunity." "You were dating Rebecca Morrison," Olivia reminded him. "That ended 2 weeks into the semester," Jackson said. "I kept meaning to tell you, but we never talked. Not really. Just transactions at the coffee shop. 1 black coffee, 1 sugar, every morning for 4 months. Oh, Olivia's mind reeled. All this time, she'd thought Jackson Reed barely noticed her existence beyond her utility as a barista. She'd nursed a painful crush that senior year, watching him from afar, while convincing herself he lived in a different world. And now, 8 years later, they were locked in a supply room with the truth hanging between them like a live wire. "Why were you so cruel today?" Olivia asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Why have you been impossible to work with since I started here?" Jackson leaned back against the opposite wall, putting maximum distance between them in the tiny space. When he finally spoke, his voice was raw. "'Cause when you walked into Sterling 6 months ago, with that same determined look in your eyes, I panicked. I told myself you wouldn't remember me, that I should keep it professional. But then every time I saw you, I remembered sitting in that coffee shop, rehearsing how I'd ask you out, building up courage that never came. And instead of dealing with it like an adult, I became exactly what I hated, someone who uses his position to keep people at a distance. The confession hung in the air between them. Outside, they could hear muffled voices in the hallway, someone laughing, the elevator dinging. Normal office sounds from a normal Friday afternoon, while their entire history rewrote itself in this locked room. "I wrote my resignation letter this morning," Olivia said quietly. "Before the meeting, I've been carrying it in my bag for 3 weeks, updating it every time you humiliated someone, waiting for the day you turn your full attention on me." Jackson's head snapped up. "You can't quit. Watch me," Olivia said. "The second that door opens, I'm walking straight to HR and submitting it. You were right about one thing. I am replaceable. And I'd rather be replaced than spend another day working for someone who treats people like they're disposable." "I don't think you're disposable," Jackson said fiercely, pushing off the wall. "That's the problem. You're the exact opposite. You're the analyst everyone wants on their team. You're the person who stays late to help the interns. You're the one who solved the Brennan account crisis that 3 senior executives couldn't crack. You're irreplaceable, Olivia, and that terrifies me." He was close now, close enough that Olivia could see the genuine emotion in his eyes, the vulnerability he never showed in the office. "Why?" she asked. "Why does that terrify you?" "Because I'm still that kid in the coffee shop," Jackson admitted. "Still rehearsing what to say to you. Still afraid that if I tell you the truth, you'll laugh or worse. You'll look at me with pity, because the VP of operations can't manage a simple conversation with the woman he's been in love with since college." Oh. The words seemed to echo in the small space. In love. Present tense. Not past. Olivia opened her mouth to respond, but no sound came out. 8 years of assumptions crumbled around her. Every harsh word from Jackson over the past 6 months reframed itself in this new context, each one a shield rather than a sword. "Say something," Jackson said desperately. "Yell at me. Tell me I'm insane. Tell me to leave you alone. Just say something." "You're not leaving here," Olivia whispered, echoing his earlier words to her. "Not until we figure this out." And for the first time since that supply room door had locked behind them, Jackson Reed smiled. A real smile, not the cold professional mask he wore in meetings, but something genuine and hopeful and terrified all at once, in the distance. They heard the rumble of an elevator and voices getting closer. Maintenance, probably. Their private moment was running out, but neither of them moved toward the door. Instead, they stood in that small room surrounded by printer paper and cleaning supplies.
Finally.
Honest with each other for the first time in 8 years. The lock would open soon. The real world would rush back in. But for now, trapped together. They had something more valuable than escape. They had the truth. The maintenance workers' voices faded down another hallway, leaving Jackson and Olivia alone again in the dimly lit supply room. The revelation hung between them like morning fog, beautiful and disorienting. Olivia pressed her back against the metal shelving, needing the solid support as her world tilted on its axis. "You can't just say something like that and expect everything to be okay," Olivia said finally, her voice shaking. "You can't tell me you've been in love with me since college after spending 6 months making my work life miserable." Jackson ran both hands through his hair, completely destroying its usual perfect style. I know how it sounds. But I need you to understand something about that semester at Ridgemont." "What's there to understand?" "You were the golden boy with the trust fund. I was the girl who smelled like coffee grounds and exhaustion." "You have no idea what my life was like," Jackson said, his voice taking on an edge. "Everyone saw the money, the name, the opportunities. Nobody saw the pressure. My father had my entire life mapped out before I could walk. Red Industries needed an heir, and I was it. Every class, every internship, every relationship was scrutinized for how it would benefit the family empire." Olivia felt a flicker of something, not quite sympathy, but recognition. And Rebecca Morrison fit the plan. "Perfectly," Jackson confirmed bitterly. "Old money, right connections, appropriate pedigree. We dated because it was expected. I ended it because I couldn't pretend anymore. Not after I met you." He paused, his eyes finding hers in the shadows. "You were the first real thing in my life. No agenda, no networking, no strategic value. Just brilliant and passionate and so alive. You terrified me because you made me want something my family would never approve of. So you did nothing, Olivia said, but the anger in her voice had softened. I did nothing, Jackson agreed. And I've regretted it every day since. Senior year ended, you disappeared. And I spent 8 years building the career my father demanded while trying to forget the girl from the coffee shop who got away. Olivia slid down to sit on the floor, her back against the shelves. After a moment, Jackson joined her, their shoulders almost touching in the narrow space between the shelving units. You want to know why I worked 3 jobs? Olivia asked quietly. Why I was so driven that I couldn't see anything except the next assignment, the next shift, the next goal? Jackson nodded, not speaking, just listening. My mom raised me alone. She cleaned houses for families like yours, Jackson. Families who never learned her name, who left money on the counter like she was invisible. She worked herself into an early grave so I could go to Ridgemont on that scholarship. She died my sophomore year, and I couldn't let her sacrifice me nothing. Every grade, every achievement, it was for her. Olivia Jackson breathed, but she held up a hand. Let me finish. When I graduated, I had offers from 3 companies. Sterling wasn't one of them. I worked my way up at Morgan Analytics for 5 years, building my reputation, proving I belonged in rooms I wasn't born into. When Sterling finally recruited me, it felt like vindication. Like I'd finally made it. She laughed without humor. Then I walked into that conference room 6 months ago and saw you sitting at the head of the table. And every insecurity I thought I'd conquered came flooding back. You recognize me? Jackson said, realizing. Of course I recognized you. How could I forget? You were everything I told myself I couldn't want. You represented a world that would never accept someone like me. So I built walls, stayed professional, kept my distance. And you made that easy by being cold and impossible. I was protecting myself, Jackson admitted. Badly, I saw you walk in with that confidence, that fire. I remembered exactly how it felt to want something I couldn't have. So I pushed you away before you could reject me. I never would have rejected you, Olivia said softly. That's what you don't understand. That semester, I had such a stupid crush on you. Every morning when you came in for coffee, I'd make sure I was the one who took your order. I memorized how you liked it. I noticed when you were stressed about exams, when you were happy about something, when you were tired. I thought about you constantly, and I hated myself for it. Jackson turned to look at her, his eyes searching her face. Why did you hate yourself for it? Because wanting you felt like betraying everything my mother taught me. She always said, don't trust rich boys. They'll break your heart and move on without a second thought. And I absolutely knew, that someone like you would never seriously consider someone like me. You were wrong, Jackson said fiercely. So wrong. That last week of classes, I finally worked up the courage. I had a whole plan. I was going to come to the coffee shop during your shift, order my usual coffee, and ask if you'd have dinner with me. A real date, not some campus party or group thing. Somewhere we could actually talk. Olivia's heart clenched. What happened? I showed up that Thursday afternoon. You weren't there. I asked the other barista where you were, and he said you'd quit, that it was your last day the day before. You were gone, Olivia. No goodbye, no forwarding information, just gone. I got the Morgan offer, Olivia remembered. They wanted me to start immediately, do a summer intensive program. I took it because it was too good to pass up. But also because staying on campus meant watching you graduate and move on to whatever came next. I couldn't bear it. They sat in silence, processing 8 years of missed chances and misunderstandings. The supply room felt smaller now, but not uncomfortable. More like a confessional, a space outside normal time where truth was the only currency. When you told me I was replaceable today, Olivia said, it touched something deep. My whole life I've been told I'm replaceable. The scholarship was conditional, the jobs were competitive, the opportunities were limited. I've spent years trying to become irreplaceable through sheer competence. And then you, the one person whose opinion I never stopped caring about, threw that word at me in front of everyone. Jackson closed his eyes, pain evident on his face. I was lashing out. Your presentation was flawless, Olivia. Everyone in that room knew it. But watching you shine, Watching other executives notice you, praise you, it made me crazy. I wanted to be the one you impressed. Instead, I became the villain in your story. You're not a villain, Olivia said, surprising herself with the words. You're just scared. We both are. Jackson opened his eyes and turned his whole body toward her. In the confined space, their knees touched. What are we scared of exactly? Olivia met his gaze directly. That if we try this, really try, it won't work. That all these years of wondering will end in disappointment. That the fantasy was better than the reality could ever be. And what if it's not? Jackson asked, his voice dropping lower. What if the reality is even better than 8 years of fantasy? Then we have everything to lose, Olivia whispered. Jackson reached out slowly, giving her every opportunity to pull away, and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. The gentle touch sent electricity through her entire body. I've been losing you for 8 years, he said. At least if we try and fail, I'll know. I won't spend the rest of my life wondering what if. Olivia leaned into his touch without thinking. Your family still won't approve. I'm still the girl who doesn't fit the plan. I don't care about the plan anymore, Jackson said firmly. I'm 34 years old, and I've spent my entire life living for other people's expectations. My father wanted me in the family business. I refused and built my own career. He wanted me to marry Rebecca. Said no. At some point, I have to start choosing what I want, not what makes sense on paper. And what do you want? Olivia asked, though she could barely breathe, waiting for the answer. Jackson's hand moved from her hair to cup her cheek, his thumb brushing across her skin with devastating gentleness. You. I want you. I want morning coffee and late-night strategy sessions. I want to see you present in meetings without undermining you. I want to take you to dinner and actually talk about something other than quarterly projections. I want to know everything about who you've become in 8 years. And I want to tell you everything I should have said that semester when I was too much of a coward. Olivia felt tears prick her eyes. I wrote you a letter once. End of senior year. I poured everything into it, every feeling I'd been hiding. I walked to your dorm with it, stood outside your door for 20 minutes, and then threw it away in the trash can down the hall. I convinced myself you'd laugh, or worse, you'd pity me. I would have shown up at your door 5 minutes later, Jackson said. I would have driven to Morgan Analytics every weekend. I would have figured it out, Olivia. We would have figured it out. Can't get those years back, she said. No, he agreed. But we have now. If you want it, if you're willing to risk it. Before Olivia could respond, they heard footsteps approaching and a key rattling in the lock. The door swung open, revealing a confused maintenance worker holding a tablet. Sorry about that, folks. System glitch triggered the emergency locks. You've been in here about 45 minutes? He looked between them, taking in their position on the floor, the emotional intensity still hanging in the air. Everything okay? Jackson stood first, offering his hand to help Olivia up. She took it, feeling the warmth and strength in his grip. Everything's fine, Jackson said, not taking his eyes off Olivia. Actually, everything's better than fine. They stepped out into the hallway, blinking in the fluorescent lights. The office had emptied out, most people had gone for the weekend. Olivia checked her phone and saw a dozen messages from Patricia and colleagues asking if she was all right. I should go, Olivia said awkwardly, suddenly unsure how to navigate this new reality. Don't, Jackson said quickly. Please, come to my office. We need to talk about what happens next, how we handle this professionally. Olivia followed him down the hall to the executive suite. His office was corner space with floor 2 ceiling windows overlooking the city. It was exactly what she'd expected. Expensive furniture, awards on shelves, everything perfectly organized. But there were also surprises. A worn copy of their business strategy textbook from college on his desk. A photo of him hiking somewhere mountainous and wild. A small sketch of a coffee cup on a sticky note tacked to his bulletin board. Jackson saw her looking at the sketch. I drew that during a particularly boring board meeting. Pathetic, right? It's sweet, Olivia said. Meaning it, he gestured to the leather sofa near the windows, and they sat. Maintaining a careful distance now that they were back in the professional world. Here's what I'm thinking, Jackson began. Shifting into the decisive executive mode, she recognized, "We need to disclose this to HR. Us attempting a relationship while I'm your superior creates a conflict of interest." "Attempting a relationship?" Olivia repeated. "We haven't exactly agreed to that yet." Jackson's confidence faltered. "Haven't we?" Olivia took a deep breath. "In that supply room, everything felt possible. Out here in your office with the city spread out below us, I'm remembering all the reasons why this is complicated. The power dynamic, the office politics, the fact that everyone will assume I'm sleeping my way up the ladder. Then I'll transfer to a different division," Jackson said immediately. "Or you will. We'll eliminate the direct reporting relationship. You do that?" Olivia asked, startled. "I'd do anything," Jackson said simply. "I meant what I said, Olivia. I'm done letting fear make my decisions." Olivia stood and walked to the windows, looking out at the city lights beginning to glow as evening approached. She thought about her mother, about all those years of struggle and sacrifice. She thought about the girl she'd been at Ridgemont, so determined to prove herself that she'd missed the chance at something real. She thought about the woman she'd become, still fighting, still striving, still afraid to want anything that wasn't achievement-shaped. "I don't know how to do this," she admitted, not turning around. "I don't know how to be vulnerable. I don't know how to let someone in who has the power to hurt me." She felt Jackson come up behind her, close but not touching. "Neither do I. We'll figure it out together. Badly at first, probably. We'll make mistakes and have fights and disappoint each other sometimes. But we'll be doing it honestly. No more pretending, no more walls." Olivia turned to face him, and the look in his eyes nearly undid her. Raw hope mixed with fear, vulnerability mixed with determination. "Okay," she said. "Okay, let's try. But we do this right. We talk to HR, we set boundaries, we keep it professional at work until we figure out the personal side. And if it doesn't work, we handle it like adults." A smile broke across Jackson's face, transforming him from the cold executive into someone warm and real. "Deal. Though I'm warning you now, it's going to work. I'm not letting you get away twice," confident, Olivia said. But she was smiling too. "About you. Always have been." They stood by the windows as the city darkened around them. Two people finally brave enough to reach for what they'd wanted all along. Monday. Morning arrived with the weight of consequence. Olivia sat in HR Director Margaret Foster's office. Jackson beside her in the uncomfortable chairs reserved for difficult conversations. Margaret, a woman in her late 50s with silver hair and sharp eyes, reviewed the disclosure form they'd submitted with careful attention. "Let me make sure I understand," Margaret said, looking over her reading glasses. "You two have a personal history from college 8 years ago. Reconnected when Miss Carter joined Sterling 6 months ago. And began a romantic relationship as of this past Friday." "That's correct," Jackson confirmed. "And you're requesting immediate restructuring to eliminate the direct reporting relationship?" "Yes," Olivia said. "I've outlined 3 potential solutions in the attached memo. I can transfer to the marketing division under Christine Walsh. Jackson can take the promotion to Chief Strategy Officer that's been offered twice. Or we can create a lateral move for me to the innovation team." Margaret set down the papers. "You've thought this through." "We spent the weekend thinking of little else," Jackson admitted. What Margaret didn't know, what they'd carefully kept to themselves, was how that weekend had unfolded. After leaving his office Friday night, they'd gone to a quiet restaurant and talked for hours. Then Saturday, Jackson had shown up at Olivia's apartment with coffee. Black with 1 sugar, from the same chain where she'd worked in college. They'd spent the day together, walking through the city, sharing 8 years of stories, learning each other all over again. Sunday night, sitting on Olivia's couch with takeout containers scattered around them, Jackson had kissed her. Not the desperate emotional kiss of the supply room, but something slower, deeper, full of promise. And Olivia had finally let herself believe this might actually work. "The CSO position makes the most sense," Margaret said, pulling Olivia back to the present. "Jackson, you've been avoiding that promotion for 2 years. It's time. Olivia, you'll report to Thomas in operations. He's fair, competent, and has no history with either of you. When would this take effect? Jackson asked. Immediately. I'll notify the relevant parties this morning. You'll both need to sign additional disclosure agreements. And I strongly recommend keeping the relationship private until the restructuring is complete. Office rumors can be vicious. They signed the papers, agreed to the terms, and left HR together. In the elevator alone for a moment, Jackson caught Olivia's hand. No regrets? He asked quietly. Terrified, she admitted, but no regrets. The elevator doors opened onto the executive floor, and they dropped hands, stepping back into their professional roles. Jackson headed to his office to begin the transition, while Olivia returned to her desk. Aware of curious looks from colleagues who'd witnessed Friday's confrontation, her phone buzzed with a text from Jackson. Lunch? Need to maintain my strength for the executive meeting where I explain why I'm finally taking the CSO role. Olivia smiled and typed back. Can't. Act. Have a working lunch with the Brennan account team. Dinner. Already counting the hours, came his reply. The morning passed in a blur of meetings and emails. Olivia was presenting campaign results to Thomas and to other directors when Patricia stuck her head in. Olivia, do you have a moment? It's urgent. Olivia excused herself and followed Patricia to an empty conference room, her stomach sinking. Patricia's expression was serious. I need to know what happened Friday, Patricia said without preamble. The executive team is asking questions. Jackson suddenly accepts the CSO role after turning it down repeatedly. You submit a transfer request. HR flags a disclosure form. People are connecting dots. Olivia had prepared for this. Jackson and I have a personal history that created an uncomfortable dynamic. We've addressed it professionally, through proper channels. That's all anyone needs to know. Is he threatening you? Because if there's any coercion, any pressure, I will go to the board myself. The genuine concern in Patricia's voice touched Olivia. No threats. No pressure. Just two people trying to do the right thing in a complicated situation. Patricia studied her for a long moment. You're a brilliant analyst, Olivia. Don't let anyone make you feel like you have to compromise that for any reason. I won't, Olivia promised, meaning it. The week crawled by with agonizing slowness. Jackson was consumed with his CSO transition, meetings with board members and department heads filling his calendar. Olivia focused on wrapping up projects before her transfer, maintaining strict professionalism despite the constant awareness of Jackson's presence in the building. They texted throughout each day. Small messages that kept them connected, thinking about you in this budget meeting, wishing we were anywhere else, or your presentation from this morning was perfect. Wanted to tell you in front of everyone, but settled for telling you here. Thursday evening. Olivia was packing up her desk when her phone rang. Unknown number? She almost declined, but something made her answer. Olivia Carter. A male voice. Older, authoritative. Yes. This is Richard Reed, Jackson's father. I think we should talk. Olivia's blood went cold. How did you get this number? I have resources. Meet me tomorrow morning, 7 a.m., at the Gramercy Hotel restaurant. Come alone. The line went dead before she could respond. Olivia stood frozen, phone in hand, mind racing. She should tell Jackson. They'd promised honesty, no secrets, but something made her hesitate. This was the confrontation she'd been dreading, the moment when Jackson's world collided with hers. Maybe she needed to face it alone first, understand exactly what she was up against. Friday morning, Olivia arrived at the Gramercy at 6:50. Richard Reed was already there, sitting at a corner table, looking exactly like she'd imagined. Silver hair. Expensive suit, the same blue eyes as Jackson, but colder. More calculating, Miss Carter. He greeted her, not standing. Thank you for coming. I don't recall having much choice, Olivia said, sitting across from him. Everyone has choices. The question is whether we make smart ones. He slid a document across the table. I'm prepared to offer you $2 million to resign from Sterling Enterprises and end your involvement with my son. Olivia stared at the papers without touching them. You're trying to buy me off. I'm offering you a generous settlement for a brief relationship. Take the money, start your own consultancy, build something impressive. Just do it away from Jackson. And if I refuse? Richard's expression hardened. Then things become complicated. Your employee file is exemplary, but I can make sure you never work in this industry again. One call to my contacts at Morgan Analytics, at the other firms where you've applied in the past, your reputation becomes questionable. Doors close. You're threatening me, Olivia said, keeping her voice steady despite the rage building inside her. I'm protecting my son from a mistake. You're intelligent, ambitious, attractive. I understand the appeal, but you and Jackson come from fundamentally different worlds. This infatuation will fade, and when it does, he'll realize what he's risked for someone who doesn't belong in his life. Someone like me, you mean? Someone whose mother cleaned houses for people like you. Richard didn't flinch. Your background isn't the issue. It's the complications you bring. Jackson has responsibilities, expectations. A relationship with an employee creates scandals. Board members are already questioning his judgment. This ends badly for everyone, especially you. Olivia stood slowly, leaving the document untouched on the table. I'm going to tell you something, Mr. Reed, and I want you to listen carefully. I spent my entire childhood watching my mother be treated as invisible by people like you. I spent years convinced I didn't deserve to want anything beyond survival and success. Your son is the first person who ever made me feel like I could have both. My son is confused, Richard interrupted. Your son is 34 years old and capable of making his own decisions. You don't get to control his life anymore. And you certainly don't get to buy me off like I'm a problem to be solved. Olivia leaned forward, hands flat on the table. I'm not taking your money. I'm not quitting my job. And I'm not ending my relationship with Jackson. What I'm going to do is walk out of here and tell him exactly what happened. Because unlike you, we don't keep secrets from each other. She turned and walked toward the exit, heart pounding. You'll regret this, Richard called after her. The only thing I regret, Olivia said without turning around, is wasting 7 minutes of my morning on this conversation. She made it to the street before her hands started shaking. She pulled out her phone and called Jackson. Hey, he answered warmly. Good morning. I was just thinking about you. Where are you? Olivia asked, her voice tight. My apartment. What's wrong? I'm coming over. We need to talk. 20 minutes later, she was standing in Jackson's penthouse apartment. The space as elegant and carefully designed as she'd expected, telling him everything about his father's offer. Jackson's face went through several emotions: shock, anger, and finally something that looked like determination. He pulled out his phone and made a call. Dad, it's me. We're coming to the house. 1 hour. Be there. He hung up without waiting for a response.
Jackson.
Olivia started, but he pulled her close. Should have warned you. Should have known he'd do something like this. But I'm ending it now, today. You're not fighting this battle alone. They drove to the Reed estate in Greenwich, in tense silence, Jackson's hand finding hers whenever he wasn't shifting gears. The house was exactly what Olivia had feared: massive, imposing. Old money in every brick and window. Richard met them in his study, unsurprised by their arrival. Jackson. Let me explain, he began. No, Jackson cut him off. You're going to listen. For once in my life, you're going to hear what I actually want, instead of what you've decided is best for me. Richard's jaw tightened, but he remained silent. Love Olivia, Jackson said simply. I've loved her since college, and I'm not letting her go because you've decided she doesn't fit your plan. I'm taking the CSO role because it's what I want, not what you want. And if you can't accept that, if you try to interfere with my life or her career, then I walk away from everything Reed-related. No more consulting for your companies, no more family dinners, no more pretending we're close. You'd choose her over your family? Richard asked coldly. I'd choose my own life over your expectations, Jackson corrected. I've spent 34 years trying to be the son you wanted. It's time I became the man I actually am. Olivia watched Richard process this. Saw the moment he realized Jackson meant every word. She's using you. Richard tried one last time. No, Jackson said. She's the only person who's ever wanted me without wanting something from me. She worked 3 jobs in college and never once asked me for anything. She built her own career without trading on anyone's name. She's everything you taught me to value. Intelligent, driven, self-made. The only problem is, she's not who you chose, and you can't stand losing control." The silence stretched out painfully. Finally, Richard stood and walked to the window, his back to them. "If I accept this," he said slowly, "if I allow this relationship, you'll still take the CSO role. Still attend family functions? Still be part of the Reed legacy?" "On my terms," Jackson said. With Olivia at my side, Richard turned, his eyes finding Olivia's. "You understand what you're signing up for? The scrutiny, the pressure, the expectations." "I understand that I love your son," Olivia said clearly, "and I'm willing to fight for that, even if it means fighting you." Something shifted in Richard's expression, not quite approval, but perhaps respect. "You're not what I expected," good Olivia said. "I'd hate to be predictable." Richard almost smiled. "Fine, do what you want. But understand this, both of you, if this relationship falls apart, if it creates scandal or damages the Reed name, there will be consequences. We'll make sure it doesn't fall apart," Jackson said. Taking Olivia's hand, they left the study together, not waiting for Richard's dismissal. In the car, driving back to the city, Olivia finally let herself breathe. "That was intense," she said. "That was us winning," Jackson corrected. "Not perfectly, not easily, but winning." 6 months later, Olivia stood backstage at a marketing conference, adjusting her collar and reviewing her keynote speech notes. The past half year had been a whirlwind. Her successful transition to the innovation team, Jackson's transformation of the strategy division, their relationship becoming public at Sterling and then industry-wide. There had been challenges. Whispers about favoritism that Olivia had silenced with flawless work. Awkward family dinners where Richard tested her knowledge of business and politics. Long nights when Jackson's demanding schedule conflicted with hers, leading to arguments and makeups and learning to compromise. But there had also been joy. Lazy Sunday mornings, drinking coffee in bed, late-night strategy sessions where they challenged each other's ideas. The moment Jackson's family had finally accepted her at the Winter Gala, his mother pulling her aside to say she'd never seen Jackson this happy. 5 minutes. "Miss Carter," the stage manager announced. Olivia felt arms wrap around her from behind. Jackson kissed her neck gently. "You're going to be brilliant," he whispered. "Like always." "You're supposed to be in the audience," she protested, but leaned back against him. "I wanted to give you this first," he said. Pressing something small into her hand, Olivia looked down at the coffee shop loyalty card, worn and faded. Her name was written on it in Jackson's handwriting, with 9 punches out of 10 filled in. "I found it in my old textbook," Jackson explained. "From that semester, you gave it to me the first week? Said I'd earned a free coffee after 10 visits? I kept it. Carried it around for 8 years like a talisman." Olivia turned in his arms, tears threatening her carefully applied makeup. "This is the most romantic thing anyone's ever given me." "Get used to it," Jackson said, kissing her softly. "I have 8 years of romance to catch up on." "Miss Carter, it's time." The stage manager called out Olivia, handed the card back to Jackson. "Keep it safe. I want to see it later." "I have something better planned for later," Jackson said, with that smile that still made her knees weak. "But you need to go give that speech first. Show them why you're the best in the business." Olivia walked onto the stage to thunderous applause, the lights bright in her eyes. As she began her presentation on innovation and marketing strategy, she spotted Jackson in the front row. Watching her with undisguised pride and love, she thought about the girl she'd been at Ridgemont. Too scared to take chances, too focused on survival to think about happiness. She thought about the woman she'd become, still driven and ambitious, but now brave enough to want more than success. The presentation ended to a standing ovation. During the Q&A session, someone asked how she'd managed to rise so quickly in the industry. "I took risks," Olivia answered honestly. "Not just professional risks, but personal ones. I let myself want things I thought I couldn't have. I fought for them. And I surrounded myself with people who believed in me, even when I didn't believe in myself." Her eyes found Jackson's again, and he nodded, understanding exactly what she meant. That evening, Jackson took her to the rooftop of his building. The city spread out below them like a carpet of light, and a small table was set with candles and champagne. "What's all this?" Olivia asked, though her heart was already racing. "This is me not wasting another day," Jackson said. He took her hands, and Olivia realized he was nervous, genuinely nervous in a way she rarely saw. 8 years ago, I let fear stop me from asking you out. 6 months ago, I almost let pride push you away forever. I'm done letting timing or circumstances or anything else control our story. He dropped to one knee, and Olivia's breath caught. "Olivia Carter, you are the smartest, strongest, most beautiful person I've ever known. You challenge me. You inspire me. You make me want to be better every single day. I love you completely, and I want to spend the rest of my life proving that you took a chance on the right person." He pulled out a ring, simple and elegant. "Will you marry me?" Olivia looked at the man kneeling before her, the boy from the coffee shop who'd become the partner she'd always needed. She thought about everything they'd overcome, everything they'd built together, everything still waiting ahead of them. "Yes," she said, her voice strong and sure. "Yes, absolutely yes." Jackson slid the ring onto her finger and stood, pulling her into a kiss that felt like coming home. Below them, the city carried on, millions of people living their own stories. But up here, under the stars, two people who'd found each other twice finally stopped running from their future together. "I love you," Olivia said against his lips. "I should have said it that semester. Should have said it the day I walked into Sterling. Should have said it in that supply room." "You're saying it now," Jackson said, holding her close. "That's all that matters." They danced slowly on the rooftop. No music, except the sound of the city below. Two people who'd taken the long way around to find each other but had finally arrived exactly where they were meant to be. The next morning, Olivia would call her best friend to share the news. Next week, they'd tell both families, navigate the joy and complexity of merging their lives officially. Next month, they'd start planning a wedding that would blend both their worlds. But tonight, they simply held each other under the stars, grateful for second chances, locked doors, and the courage to finally choose love over fear in the end. Being replaceable was never the real issue. The real question was whether they'd be brave enough to become irreplaceable to each other. And standing there together, they both knew the answer. They finally were.